Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Happy Friday, Mike.
Happy Friday, Phil. Welcome again to another Random Waypoints podcast. We're excited, as always, to be here. Absolutely. And we got a pretty full lineup for you today. So
yeah,
I'm excited to get going.
Mike, I made a mistake a couple of years ago on the show by...
Only one?
Well, actually, it's a continual one. I originally did a rest in peace or memoriam type setup for, I don't even remember who it was, but it was somebody big that I had feelings about. And the next thing you know, I ended up kind of feeling obligated to do other people. But this week, this is one of the people that no matter what, I would have definitely mentioned, because this was somebody I used to keep up with. And that's the death of Robert Duvall, which marks the loss of one of the most accomplished actors in American film history. Across decades of work, Duvall built a reputation for precision, consistency, and credibility on screen. His performances were controlled, deliberate, and rooted in realism, whether he was leading a film or supporting it. He appeared in some of the most influential movies ever made, and his presence reliably elevated the material. Duvall's career wasn't defined by spectacle or reinvention, but by range, durability, and respect for craft. Few actors managed to remain relevant across so many eras without changing who they were or how they worked. So, Mike, when you think about Robert Duvall and his body of work, what stands out to you the most?
Oh, I think, what do you call it? My brain isn't working right now. What's his, oh gosh, Phil, help me out here.
Are you trying to think of his movies?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, so this is an easy one for me because he's one of my favorite actors. The things he's most noted for, I think most people will remember him as the general who walked out onto the battlefield in Apocalypse Now, talking about he loved the smell of napalm. That's a famous thing he did. He was in The Godfather 1 and The Godfather 2.
That was what was on the tip of my tongue. Godfather. Yeah, that's how I remember him the most.
And even though I just mentioned movies that I love, that I've watched many times, The Godfather 2 is probably my most rewatched movie ever out of all movies. But my favorite movies aren't going to be on a lot of people's lists, Mike. Like, I liked him in the movie Network. Network is similar to the movie that we are going to talk about today. It's a movie that when you look back at it back then and look at it now, it's still relevant, and it actually discusses the beginnings of news becoming entertainment. Another movie that really sticks out to me about him is Open Range. It was a cowboy movie. I don't ever hear anybody talk about that. Mike, you a cowboy guy. Promise you, watch Open Range. It's
I saw that movie. I remember seeing that movie. Yeah. He was in MASH too.
That was my last one that I was going to say.
Yeah, I don't think people remember that.
I do, because MASH is... I didn't really like the TV series. Right. And they didn't stray that far off of the story, but it just didn't have the same vibe as the movie. The movie was like relevant about the war, yet made it still funny. And for everybody listening, I'm going to mention a movie to you where he's not the star, but if you're not familiar with his excellence, this is a movie to watch, because this is a movie where he's understated. You know, a lot of times when we think of an actor and we talk about a role, it's something where he's yelling or being demonstrative or whatever. And this is not one of those movies. He's doing quite the opposite, but he's a very powerful figure in the movie. And that movie is called A Civil Action. The star of the movie is John Travolta. It's actually about a historic case against Monsanto. Excellent, excellent movie. So I have lots and lots of memories of Robert Duvall. Rest in peace, Robert Duvall. And since we're on deaths, I got to mention this one, Mike. You know, Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson died. Anything you want to say about him before I get into what I'm going to say?
I mean, he obviously is another icon of so many things, to be honest. But it was kind of weird because I guess I didn't realize that he was. I don't know how to say this nicely. I mean, he was in a bad way for quite some time now. Because I think when it happened, I was like, geez, I haven't heard anything about Jesse Jackson in so long. I wonder why. And then he had that, I forget what the disease is called, but not good. So he was like incapacitated and couldn't even, I don't think he could speak for the last bunch of years. So in any case, rest in peace to Jesse Jackson.
Well, I let you go first, Mike, because I didn't want to bias you with the things that I'm going to say. I actually knew him. I used to shoot ball with him at the Hyde Park Athletic Club. I know his son. I'm from Chicago, and I have a very different view of him than you're probably thinking I'm about to go. And I was asked whether I was going to speak about him before this show. So I'm also speaking about him, and I'm also answering listeners. The listeners have asked for my opinion on Jesse Jackson, and this is it. I remember him calling on Black America to boycott the Coca-Cola company. And later, his half-brother ended up with a Coke distributorship. I remember him urging a boycott of Anheuser-Busch, and years later, his son owned a distributorship there too. In my view, that's not empowerment, that's opportunism, where mass sacrifice produced privileged gain. So basically what I know of him, what I've seen of him, my thoughts of him is he was a person who was a opportunist at every stage in his life. The first being that he was just fortunate enough, and I mean this in the most sensitive way. He was fortunate enough to be on the balcony at the time that Martin Luther King got shot. And he played that for the rest of his life to his profits, to his advantages. There's nothing anybody can actually give me substantive that he's done in contributions to Black America. As a matter of fact, I almost stumbled saying that. I almost said African American because that's a word in which he created, that most Black Americans, which is a distinct thing to me, never really latched on to. And in the last couple of years, we have actually been more demonstrative in our assault on that word. We are not African Americans. We are either Americans or foundational Black Americans. So that's something that's being played up in the news. And if you actually talk to Black America, we were never behind the words African American, and we're walking away from it now. So it's kind of apropos his leaving us at the time where we're walking away from those words.
I'll add he had a and not knowing him like you did, he had a very complicated history, I think, on top of it. So I didn't realize as much of the opportunistic thing, but certainly he had maybe that's because of that. He had there was a lot of things that would come out about him and talked about him that you never really knew whether it was true, not true, propaganda or whatnot. He was just very complicated.
Well, if you have any questions about some of them, I know the answers. He is the origin story for the modern day civil rights leader that basically they assault a group or an organization and they basically extort them for money. They don't really make any change. They create a boycott, or they get on TV and they complain about something, and then they usually get paid to be on TV more. They usually get, you follow the money. Like I just mentioned, somebody in their family all of a sudden is getting paid that's related to who you were complaining about. And that has been not just, he was the first, but that's been the playbook ever since. So you may be shocked to hear this. As soon as I hear a person say I'm a civil rights leader, I have a very negative thought process about you, because you're part of the game. I've mentioned many times I have seen behind the curtain of politics, and that's just like to me, when a guy tells me he's spent his whole life working with children, I don't immediately think good. I'm thinking, oh, he might be a PDF.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same thing with a civil rights leader. I think you're a scammer. I think you're an extortionist. I think you are a person who is using the plight of the weak or the lesser than for your personal gain. But you don't ever generally help the people.
Mm-hmm.
The last
which, by the way, you just described politician, the word politician in general.
Yeah, the last time I heard a civil rights leader actually get anywhere and get something done is I got to sit in the front of a bus. That's the last time I heard something. I ain't heard nothing since.
Yep.
But it's a whole lot of talk and whatever, and they profit. So rest in peace to Jesse Jackson. So Mike, we've talked about
you never know where we're going to go on the podcast, do you guys?
Well, I wasn't going to even talk about him, Mike. I was just going to let that slide. But people that know me
I believe that.
Yeah. So, Mike, remember when we were talking about Collossal Biosciences creating the dire wolf back in the day? And I know you saw the new facility that they have.
Yeah. It was back in the news this week. I saw that, yeah.
Well, the wolves, they're not just alive. They're over a year now. They're acting like wolves. On their first hunt as a pack, they chased prey together and came back with a rabbit still alive, almost like they were waiting for direction. And as Collossal talks about expanding to more long lost species and buying land and building new facilities and even thinking about a future where the public could see these animals, Mike, does this eerily feel like the origin story for Jurassic Park?
Yep, I think we said that when we talked about this on a prior podcast, but it definitely sounds like Jurassic Park. I mean, there's no question, because it's got, on the surface it looks like I would say a very positive thing where they're advancing genetics and it could come up with cures and solve a lot of issues that we might have as humans. But at the same time, now you're mixing, you're screwing with like the theory of Darwin, basically. So you're mixing stuff that was supposed to be gone for a reason, because something else inevitably probably took its place, and now you're introducing them and putting them on the same planet at the same time. So, that's a super slippery slope, and we'll see. I mean, they seem to be gangbusters, and like you said, the article I saw with the new facility was really. I mean, I don't know if you thought this, Phil, but like it was very much to me like trying to promote what they do. In other words, it was like creating a Hollywood movie set. It had animatronic or whatever thing, fake wolves when you come in the door and all this stuff. So they're definitely marketing themselves. It isn't just like a bunch of weird scientists in a cave somewhere trying to do something. It's like it was like Jurassic Park. That's what it looks like.
So, Mike, we are usually ahead of the curve on our predictions, so let's stay ahead of the curve, okay?
Okay.
So they've made a point of noting that they've gotten hundreds and hundreds of acres that they've bought, and they've got new facilities and everything. I could not find one hint of where it is. And I don't think that the size of the places that they're talking about are or could be in America. I think that some of these facilities that they're building for the future are in other places. One of my guesses is Africa, and I'm wondering what you think about my guess, or if you guess something different.
I don't know. I mean, on the surface, I thought they were in Texas, right?
Well, they are now. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's put it this way. If they are indeed trying to do what I think they're trying to do, they're likely going to go and put it in places where there's less restrictions and laws, and then they can get away with more stuff.
I agree with that. And I thought about islands, but from everything that I've gotten from them as information, I can't think of an island that's not well populated that they could go to and have these kind of experiments.
Right.
And I can't think of anywhere else other than Africa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or if it's going to be cold animals, maybe Siberia, but then we'd have to work with Russia.
Right. Yeah, Africa is obviously a leading candidate, I think. You
were going to tell me something about Africa, weren't you, Mike?
Oh, I was going to give we're going to do a segment here today called Story Time. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because, occasionally you all of us, I think, possibly as adventurers or overlanders, look back on things that they've done over time, trips that we've taken, different things. And yesterday was my birthday. And
happy birthday, Mike!
Thank you. But in any case, what made me remember was 25 years ago to the day. It was actually the night of my birthday. I was on a trip in Africa with my old Land Rover. There were 4 old Land Rovers and 8 guys, and we had pulled into a little. I want to call it a village. It was I guess it's a bigger town, but it's called Nouadhibou, Mauritania. And most people probably out there have never been there. In fact, I'm pretty sure you cannot go to Mauritania right now. I think it's off limits. In fact, I think Trump actually put it on his list of countries we're not even allowed to go to as Americans or something. I'm pretty sure I saw that, but it's certainly not safe at this point. And by the way, I'm not sure it was safe then. So we had driven down the west coast of Africa out of Western Sahara and Morocco, and we pulled into this outpost town called Nouadhibou, and the only thing in that town was really rough sailor types, because the only thing that happened in that was it was a stopover port, and container ships and things would come in there. So it was like a rough, sailing town. There was nothing good going on in that town. In any case, we found this hotel, and I use that, it's a strong word to use a word hotel, but in any case, it once was a hotel. We walked into the lobby. You could tell it was beautiful at one time. I think the French built it, had a big water fountain and all this stuff. No water in it. Didn't look like it had water in it in 30 years. And then it had all these curtains around where there must have been a dining room off to one side and all this stuff. Nothing worked, right? The check-in desk was like on a bunch of milk crates, and there was probably a dozen to 20 different prostitutes like laying around on the outskirts of the room, for real. And we get into we get ushered, and they're propositioning us and whatever. So we get into our room, we lock the door. There's 8 guys, remember? There's eight of us. But our trucks, the Land Rovers, were parked in the alley right behind the hotel. And needless to say, we were not comfortable with anything about the situation. So, and I remember I was talking to a friend of mine that was on the trip yesterday, and Jim, he says, yeah, you remember that? We turned on the water because we were thinking about taking showers. We hadn't taken a shower in a bunch of days coming through the desert, and sure enough, out comes like. And it wasn't brown; it was like black water. I mean, it could have been sewage water coming out of the shower. So nobody took a shower, but we decided we were going to do shifts, watching the trucks. And my buddy and Pat and I, had the 12 midnight to 2 a.m. shift. And so we go out, we got our lawn chairs out, and we're sitting next to the trucks. The 4 trucks are parked there. The alley's dark. There's rats and shit scurrying down the thing. It was spooky as hell. And I just remember I was holding a machete, and Pat had like an axe, a big axe handle. And I remember saying, "Oh my God, this is my birthday. Can you imagine? I'm sitting in an alley here and I'm guarding trucks." And Pat looks at me and he goes, "Mike, Pat's considerably older than I am." Pat, and at the time, Pat goes, "Mike, I'm 58 fucking years old and I'm sitting in an alley. What the fuck am I doing? I don't need to be doing this under any circumstance." He goes, what if a bunch of guys come down the alley here and want to steal our trucks? What are you going to do?" And I just look back at him and I go, "I'm going to run." He goes, "Good answer, because that's exactly what I'm going to do." So, anyways, that's my story of Nouadhibou, Mauritania, which, by the way, we got out of the very next day and made our way into the Sahara. And we had to, I don't know, it was like a couple of weeks driving through the Sahara down the West Coast. But yeah, that's my little story. But that was 25 years ago today in my overland adventure life. And by the way, I'll plug it a little bit. I do, for some of you guys know, I have a book that I promise is eventually going to be coming out. It's basically 12 short stories from Africa, and that is included. Is a bigger story, but that is in that book. So I'll let you know here on the podcast when that eventually gets published.
Right.
And that concludes today's story time.
I don't want a digital one. I want a paper one, because
yes,
I want like a paragraph written on the front page with your signature on it for me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, Phil, because I did find a publisher in Montana that does paper. A friend of ours, I think you know her too, a motorcycle girl that we know, had her book published through them. So I've got a connection to get some real paper.
Mike, we really glossed over this last week because we had so much to talk about, and it's actually become a bigger story. So I'm kind of glad that we didn't talk about it last week. You know, Ring's Super Bowl spot for Search Party used AI and nearby cameras to find missing dogs, but it accidentally exposed how neighborhood surveillance really works. And at the same moment, cases like Nancy Guthrie remind us that opting out or skipping subscriptions doesn't necessarily stop data from existing. So what should the average person actually be worried about here?
Well, I've talked about this often and before, that I don't think there's anything you necessarily need to be worried about, certainly if you're obeying the law and doing what you're supposed to be doing. I will say, you are always monitored. You are always tracked. If you think for a second that you are not, I don't know, public, if you will, or data is not being tracked about you at all times, no matter where you are, you're wrong. And I think that was probably the most concerning thing that came out about this Ring camera thing, was that they didn't have a subscription. They didn't have anything. They weren't paying for anything. They weren't paying for storage online. But yet, the footage from their actual home was on a server somewhere in cyberspace. And the police, although it took them a while to get it, eventually were able to pull this footage down. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Who would think that a camera that you set up that is not connected, or at least you would think is not connected to the internet, because you don't have a service. So I'll give you an example. I have around the property here, I have Blink cameras. So it's the same thing. Blink is a competitor to Ring. Ring is Google and Blink is Amazon, or vice versa, I should say. No, that's right. But so I now know that my footage here, for sure as shit, is on an Amazon server somewhere.
Absolutely.
There's no question. There's no question in my mind.
If you have a camera where you type in an IP address to sync them up and watch the videos,
which, by the way, Phil, you do anyways, because almost inevitably, even if you're not doing that, you are, when you buy any kind of product, it doesn't even have to be a camera, you're largely usually doing some kind of either software update or something that where you're updating the hardware itself. So that by definition is coming from, in our society today, is coming via the internet. So even if you're not thinking that it's still connected, you gave it all the information. It certainly could still be connected, right? So it's crazy.
Mike, I'm going to get into, I was in telecommunications, and security was a large portion of that. And this may be different for law enforcement, but I learned a strategy that companies use with their security by having these jobs. And that is, you as the general public, and in this particular situation, it was the masses of employees. We thought that the level of security was one, but it was far higher than what people thought, and the abilities were there. And like, we were monitoring keystrokes and what people were doing back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
So this is not nothing new. I never told you the part. So back then, what would happen is someone would do something wrong, but they would get fired for something that had nothing to do with it, because we didn't want them to know that we had these capabilities. The point that I'm getting to is, I've taken that thought process my whole life and looked at other things, and that seems to be the basic storyline for government, whether it's a Ring camera, whatever it is that it's open-ended. You just don't have the open end. It's as simple as, when you delete something off your computer, it does not actually delete it. It deletes it from you.
Right.
Unless you go to your trash bin. And even then, until you have replaced it and overwritten it, it's still there.
It's still there. Yep. And you may not be able to recover it, but the FBI sure can.
Yeah. and bro, if you knew the level of software that you can buy legally and recover stuff, and how good it is, imagine what they got. And what you also, and I learned this through telecommunications, anything like this that's created and invented, they work in hand with the government. I can give you an example of something archaic. Like, if you were to print a ransom note on any printer made since 1972 or something like that, they can track a piece of paper printed through your printer. And that was implemented by the government and the inventor. And that happens with most of these things, where it's not like they have to make this agreement. They've already got the agreement, or you would have never been able to get it out to the market.
Yep. It's crazy.
So, Mike, the Save America Act is being framed as a move to strengthen election integrity, focusing on voter eligibility, limiting federal agency involvement, and pushing more authority back to the states. But critics argue it risks restricting lawful voters and creating new barriers. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on the Save America Act?
I'm going to be totally honest. Maybe I am completely stupid, but I do not understand what the problem with the thing is, to be honest with you. I've tried to ask my, I'm going to call them my liberal friends that seem to be against it, because that's how it seems to be being divided. And I don't really understand. I mean, almost every country in the world, you need an ID, a photo ID, to be able to vote. So to argue that you don't need that to vote in America doesn't make sense to me. So I don't understand how it restricts. I mean, it's the same bullshit argument that you hear with, the United States Postal Service, right? So here we have an organization that costs like just enormous amounts of money, loses money all the time. And the argument to not get rid of it, but which, by the way, almost every country in the world either does not have a postal service or they're phasing them out or getting rid of as we speak. But in the United States, the argument is, well, the guy that's in the way backwoods down, blah, 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 he's got to have mail because he won't be able to get his mail, and that's discriminatory. Well, I mean, give me a fucking break. Well, where do we draw the line on this? So, I mean, I hear a lot of the same arguments with this voting thing. If we require somebody to have a real ID or a passport or something that it's going to limit how. Come on, we live in 2026 for fuck's sake. So get with the program. If you can't get with the program, I don't think I want you voting anyways. So I just don't get the argument that it's restrictive. I don't get it. I don't see it. You can't convince me of it.
So Mike, you might not want to touch on this directly, so I will.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so the liberals, their whole strategy for everything is to give this worst case scenario, and when it has something to do possibly with a minority and most often with a black person, their strategy is to bring up scenarios that did exist 60, 70, 100 years ago. There was a time where it was hard for certain people to vote, and there were lots of obstacles for them to vote, and some of them were the things that they're mentioning now. But that hasn't existed in anybody's saying its lifetime. The strategy book, it appears to me that liberals is very condescending. It's basically, you black people are stupid. You black people aren't capable of getting an ID. You're uneducated. You're not smart. You can't figure things out. You need these special things done for you to have any level of equivalency in the world. Liberals, especially white liberals, are the most condescending human beings in the world. Soon as you
there's our soundbite for today.
Because they're trying to act like they're in touch with me and my people and all of this type stuff. And the reality is, if you so in touch, you know that we probably got more ID and birth certificates than any other demographic in the United States, because of some things that you could tell the truth about is we ain't trying to be caught out in the street without our ID, because the police will use that against us. We have ID. One of the claims that has always been out there is how many of us are on SNAP or on food stamps or whatever. Well, if that's most of us, then most of us got ID then, because you got to have all your paperwork together to get these benefits or whatever.
Yep.
So the facts are opposite what they say, and their message is the most condescending, racist thing that you could ever say to at least me. Because there's some stupid black folks out here that's right. We can't get no out. You stupid motherfucker. Shut the fuck up.
I mean, the other. Let me bring up another demographic. So they're also using women because they're saying that more often than not, women have changed their last name. So there's struggles with marriage and changing potentially their last name, and they're not going to have an up-to-date ID, so they won't be able to vote and all this stuff. I mean, the whole argument it's the same theory, Phil. It's like, what, these women are so stupid that they can't go and get a new passport or a new driver's license or whatever. I mean,
And
or bring their marriage certificate in and show them, and I don't know. I mean, it just is like, it's nonsense.
Mike, I haven't lived in every state, but I'm confident that it's closely aligned to what I'm about to say. Most states are set up for it to be easy for when you get married to switch your name over.
Yeah.
Some of them, like if you were to get married in the courthouse, they'll straighten all that out for you before you leave that day.
Yep.
So this isn't like some new thing. We are set up to the point of, I can get you an ID that'll have your new surname. We can give you the one with the hyphenated with both your names. They can have that to you like that. That's some BS there. And any woman who's ever been married knows this is just the stupidest thing ever. They didn't have no hard time changing their name. If anything, the only issues they may have had is a bill or something like that. You know what? But
the reality is, today you basically need ID to do just about everything. I mean, literally just about everything.
And if you don't, you had to use ID to qualify not to use your ID.
Yeah. Yep. So to argue, the entire argument against this is supposedly it's disenfranchising millions of people that don't have ready documents. So to me, this actually makes people that want to vote make sure that they do have ready documents. So it pushes the process forward, and two, obviously, the reason that they want to put this into play is to make sure that there's not double voting, there's not illegal immigrants voting, there's not dead people voting, there's not. We don't want any of that. I mean, so to me, this is the most common sense act that I've ever heard. And I literally, and we've talked about this a million times on the podcast, it's frustrating the fuck out of me right now. As you can tell, I'm getting frustrated. Here I go. I mean, if you are a liberal or on a Democratic side, by definition, you have been commanded that you have to be against this for no legitimate reason. Because most of the people I hear arguing against it, I don't even think they understand. It just is. It's come on, people. I mean,
let me educate people outside of my community. Responsible moms and dads, you reach, especially as a boy, when you reach a certain age, your parents, every time you leave the house, the first thing out their mouth is, do you have your ID? Make sure you have your ID. This is some craziness.
Yeah. I mean, you need ID to travel. You need to get on an airplane. You need shit to buy. I don't even know. You probably need one to buy a bus ticket. I mean, yeah. So don't we want to contribute to pushing the general society forward? If the argument is that you're going to disenfranchise people because they lack the documents, then shouldn't we just simply be making either the documents a little bit easier to obtain, or
they ain't hard to obtain?
I didn't want to say that, Phil. I get it. They're not hard to obtain. I mean, you got to go sit at motor vehicles or whatnot for 3 hours waiting for your stupid number to appear. I get it. It sucked for all of us. I did it. So why can't the other guy do it? I mean, that's my point. Everybody, and this is the libertarian in me, everybody needs to be responsible for themselves.
Yes.
So get off your ass and get your fucking your ID. If you want to vote. If you don't want to vote, then who gives a shit? Don't get it. I don't care. But like, this whole argument that we can't protect against the things that the bill is trying to protect against because it might disenfranchise one guy in the middle of nowhere, I don't know, South Dakota or something. I mean, I don't give a shit. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't want you to vote if you don't have ID. I don't.
Yeah, if you're so dumb you can't get ID, I don't want you to vote. I totally don't want you to vote.
Mike, like, ever since I can remember, I mean, I was taught as a kid, like, you should not only have ID on you, but if you're living on your own, you should have several copies in different places. Like, to this day, if this house burnt down, I got ID somewhere else. I could go. I got birth certificate, everything, marriage certificate.
It's a safety thing. It's a common sense thing. Something happens to you. I'm here. I'm traveling. I'm abroad. I mean, it's the law. I got to walk around with ID all the time because I'm in a foreign country. I need to. So, I mean, I just think it's common sense. Just shut the fuck up if you're against this, because you are, by definition, fucking stupid.
You on some BS.
Yeah, you're full of your BS. You've actually taught yourself to believe bullshit that is just bullshit.
And Mike, you went smooth over it, but the main reason is the immigration part. The elections is coming, and they need them immigrants to come in and vote.
It just boggles my mind.
The Democrats need help because they keep trying to. The other week it was I was about to say Magilla Gorilla Obama.
Oh yeah,
that they constantly trying to tick you off.
Yep.
I'm getting pissed off, Mike.
I'm telling you, the save thing pisses the shit out of me because I still have yet to get like an answer that made any sense. I've had people tell me and argue about the disenfranchising, and I get done listening to them, and I'm looking at them like they got three heads. I'm like, that argument is just it's like arguing in 1961 or something. Like that's not how shit works nowadays.
There was a time that in order to vote, you had to be a landowner and white. Then it transitioned.
Yeah, but not today.
Okay. And then it transitioned to being a landowner. Then it was a landowner and a business owner. The point that I'm getting to is it always started with you had to have something in the game.
Yeah.
You had to have something in the game. Mm-hmm. And all we asking for now is for you to have a driver's license.
Yep.
Ain't nobody asking you to have land. Ain't nobody asking you to be a certain ethnicity. Nothing. Nope. There's no obstacles. There's the man that's going to prevent you from getting your ID or anything. If you have what you're supposed to have, you're going to get what you're supposed to get, period.
And for all you liberal loving, like every other country in the world is somehow better than America in a bunch of categories, look it up. Just about every country in the world requires ID. You need it here in Mexico. You got to have ID, photo ID to vote. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
And I've already researched it. Of the ones that don't require ID at the actual election, you had to have already shown ID and registered and everything beforehand. So you don't do it at the thing, but you had to have ID to vote. There's no escaping that. And there's no making logic of that. And the reasons
that's common sense to me.
And my thing is, why am I trying to jump through these hoops to get a person to vote that, to me, every sign shows me they don't really put any responsibility in their vote or accountability in their vote.
Right.
I don't want that person voting. I don't want a person. I'm not even talking about for president. I'm talking about if it's just a group of guys. I don't want to vote
for anybody.
I'm talking about if it's just a group of guys and we're trying to figure something out and you don't really care about what we're doing. I don't want you voting.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't really care if you don't have an ID.
You know, Phil, we went into this podcast today and I wasn't riled up. Now I'm riled up. Oh, gosh.
So, Mike, I'm going to skip ahead to something because I want to make sure we get this in. I'm going to leave it kind of open-ended. You know, the president of your country there in Mexico has been working with Trump, and they basically shut down oil to Cuba. There's all kind of embargoes and sanctions being put on them. And I know you got somebody that's on the ground there, and report.
So I don't think it's come out in the news a whole lot because we've been focused on Venezuela and then we were focused on, this, which we may talk about later, Iran thing going on, and you got the war over. Anyways, there hasn't been a lot of focus on Cuba, but I think I said this on a prior podcast. The Cuba thing is very, very closely related to our movements and what our goals are in Venezuela, because this is about largely Trump trying to control this hemisphere and make it a U.S. Friendly zone. Let's just call it that, right? So. And it's funny because I even saw the other day an article from a left-wing thing admitting that it looks like Trump got Venezuela right. I mean, they were actually insinuating that he might have actually got this right, because on the ground in Venezuela, things are improving for the real people. There's movement towards getting cooperation from other countries. There's a lot going on. Anyways, the Cuba thing. I have a good friend of mine is actually on the ground in Cuba. Has been for a while. He's been there for about a year and a half, doing some, I don't want to say charity, but it's aid work. Any case, so I got an opportunity to talk to him. He called me for my birthday, and I had an opportunity to talk to him. So I want to pass this along for those of you that are not aware of what's going on in Cuba from the eyes of somebody that actually is there. His report, and he's both in Havana and outside, moves around a fair amount, and said that the situation is positive from a standpoint. The people are hanging in there. Nobody is really starving or anything yet. Which, by the way, let me paint the picture back a little bit. Cuba hasn't been super stable for quite some time. This is not a new thing. They've always been food insecurities. There's always been, poverty. There's always been, these issues have gone on for quite some time. And I had the opportunity to go to Cuba about maybe 8 years ago. So I saw some of this for myself. It was a very pleasant country from a standpoint of the people. It's a beautiful country, by the way. The people are super friendly. But their culture there is very, I think the best word I would use, and my buddy said the same thing, that they're beat down. So they've had so many years of this communist control that they've just sort of put their arms up in the air and be like, well, we'll see what's going to happen. And they're not where, contrary to things like where you see in Iran or other places where people are picketing and very active. They're kind of all just sitting back and waiting. But the morale on the streets, from what he tells me, is that they actually believe that something is going to happen this time.
Yes.
They think that the government is very close to collapsing. They have run out. He said that about a third of the gas stations, maybe even heading towards a half of them, have run out of fuel now. So the movement around the country is becoming harder. He made the decision to stay because he's still doing work, but he cannot any longer get out by air because they've pretty much run out of Jet A fuel. So that's it. There's no more, which, by the way, completely shuts Cuba down basically from any of their quote allies, of which they really don't have many left, from coming in to help them, because they can't come in, they can't fly aid in, because then they can't get their planes back out. So even a Russian transport planes really can't go in and help them, and Russia's sort of preoccupied anyways. So they're on their own. And this was, I think, and by the way, the citizens there, from what he tells me, recognize that this was a U.S. mandated thing. So the sentiment is that Trump has shut down Cuba and has successfully convinced Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico and others to join the team, which, by the way, the sentiment here in Mexico is similar from a standpoint of they don't really want to see the communist government in Cuba continue either. So I don't think that anybody over here really is in support. Their last support in our hemisphere was Venezuela. So now that Venezuela is out of the picture, they're kind of screwed. Mexico for a couple minutes decided that maybe they could make some money on this, and were originally going to ship them oil because they figured they could sell oil to them. But Trump successfully convinced her not to do that. So that's where they are. But they will run out of food, supplies, and whatnot. And the advantage Cuba has is they do grow a lot of food there, and the climate is really good. So they're not going to go. They won't go down as fast as, say, a Ukraine or somebody that is having an active war going on. But that situation, I would, since we do a lot of predictions here on the podcast, I would tell you that the government in Cuba is very close to falling. They're going to have to, quote, negotiate with America similarly to the way Venezuela just did. And what that means, I don't know exactly, but I guess it means Marco Rubio is going to be the president of Cuba. But I'm joking. But that's going to happen. So that's the word on the street is they're running out of fuel, they're running out of supplies, and the people are just sitting around waiting for it to happen, largely.
So, Mike, I have a lot of Cubans in my family on my wife's side. And they basically said what you just said. This is the first time I've ever heard them even talk about geopolitics, let alone about Cuba in this way. And the reason is because they actually believe there is possibly going to be a change. Mm-hmm. And they're not saying that it's going to even be like this great improvement, but they feel like it will improve enough where they'll have a genuine infrastructure, they'll have a genuine ability to import and export. And if they're able to travel freely, be able to import and export, and have a true infrastructure, all the other stuff will work its way out from the way they were explaining it, because they have a lot of industry there that they could do things with. A lot of people don't know it, but there are a lot of great medical doctors from Cuba. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They just ain't allowed to work here. Mm-hmm. So they also, by the way, from traveling around that island, I can tell you, it is stunningly beautiful, and if it was open, it would become a significant tourist destination. And which, by the way, it was infrastructure.
Yeah, and which it was before the communists took over. Back in the day, I mean, Havana was the place to be, right? Mm-hmm. So that is not that they can, but you got to realize it's been that way for so long that the vast majority of citizens of Cuba have never seen anything else. They've been locked under the, quote, Castro regime for generation. So Mike, that just made me think about where my prediction is going to be a little different, and you're going to be like, what? I believe that the Castros are going to come back into power. Are there any left? I mean, Raul's still alive. He's old as shit, but he's not in charge. I don't know. I mean, there's kids, maybe. I don't know.
A brother and a son. I forget their names. But that's they're going to, and maybe not even long term, but it's for temporarily in the beginning, I'm predicting a Castro. I'm not predicting which one, but a Castro.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's going to happen soon. I think we're going to be talking about this on the podcast.
If we don't talk about this one, people are going to be like, how did you not talk about this? I think everybody has seen AOC's first presidential run performance in Munich.
Ooh.
When the people
just shut up.
When the people responsible for our physical and fiscal safety can't answer basic questions about history, geography, foreign policy, or even constitutional limits on the world stage, no less, that's not a gaffe, that's a warning sign. Mike, at what point does ignorance at this level stop being embarrassing and start being disqualifying?
God, I hope it happens soon. I mean, that should be disqualifying. I mean, I'm not suggesting that she'll never be qualified, but she's not there yet. She's got a long, long, long way to go, right? I guess she's still young. So,
Mike, I don't want to hear that.
She should just shut up.
I was single digit child when I knew where the equator was.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I guess I was just being nice. Yeah.
The average young person, younger than her by a decade, has an idea of the significance of Taiwan because they see it on every toy they play with.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for her, man.
I get it.
And here's the thing. If she wasn't in her position, I'm not requiring her to know all this stuff. But, Mike, this is the worst podcast today because I'm mad about everything. you could go ahead and be a civilian. There needs to be some kind of civics test or something, or geopolitical basics 101 that you have to pass to be involved in government.
She's punching way above her grade. Let's just put that. She's way above. No question. She needs to shut up. She'd be better shutting up.
Yes. And you could see in her eyes, like, I kept looking at her, and it makes me look like when I remember when my daughter was like 13 and you're teaching them to be aggressive and speak up and this, that, and the other, and they're saying something totally wrong, but you say, yeah, because you don't want to die down their aggression. So you don't mention to them that everything they said was wrong. That's what that felt like.
Yeah.
Did you see the way people were looking at her and the guy that was sitting right next to her? He was like,
it was embarrassing.
Yes.
It was super embarrassing. Yeah. It was not America's shining moment there for sure.
So, Mike, how do we get around this? Is it crazy to have a test or something? I don't think you could give her a constitution test that you had to pass in 8th grade and she could pass it. I don't believe she could just pass a regular traditional constitution test, let alone talking about geopolitics.
Mm-mm. I mean, that's one of the challenges that we have in the United States as a politician. Let's take the role of president as an example, and you've seen this over a course of history. A lot of times, there's a difference between international politics and national politics, and there's very few people, I think, that actually understand both. So I'm not suggesting, by the way, that she knows national politics either, but she probably definitely knows national politics much better than international. So, and you saw that with even, I'll use Obama as an example. I think he understood a lot of stuff that was going on in the States, but he generally, I would think, is looked back upon and considered was pretty poor internationally. Like he did not do a good job in the global market, if you will. So, and then we've had presidents that were actually good internationally that sucked ass at home. So,
Mike, I agree in essence of what you're saying, but I disagree a little bit. Yeah, there's international and national, but I've spoken about how travel changes your opinions on things. Let's just take something national. The Somalis, the fraud that's going on in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Your views, your thoughts, your opinions are going to be totally different if you've traveled to Somalia or you've been to Africa or something like that, even though it's a national news. Yeah. So that's my whole point, is that I don't think you should hold government office unless you have knowledge in both, because even though national is national, a lot of the nuances to national, especially in a country that's a melting pot like us of all of these different cultures and immigrants, almost all the nuance is geopolitical to a national debate. That's my opinion.
So now you know, I mean, we got hard enough time just trying to get people that aren't.
Yes, I have a high standard.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. Now you want smart people too on top of this? Oh gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have exactly 0 people in the Senate at this point.
So let's bring the people who are listening who maybe aren't up on it. We're headed to Iran with all our military force right now, and also in the news, China and Russia are sending some of their military to the area. So it looks like something's about to jump off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my thing is, normally, just like Venezuela, there was a lot of protest about us bringing our ships to the area, and then there was even more protest after we did what we did in Venezuela, right? You ain't heard none of that about this. So I am of the belief that there's been private congressional hearings where they've discussed what they're going to do, and they shutting up because I haven't heard one negative thing from either side of the aisle. I haven't heard a peep.
No,
so this
which
tells
is unusual.
This tells me we are headed there on a particular mission. And we don't send that much stuff over there for nothing. We are going to blow some stuff up.
Yeah, I looked at the map of the ships and the aircraft and the stuff that we put in place in various places surrounding the Middle East. It's very clear that we're going to do something. It's unlikely that we just sent them there for a holiday. And I think we waited. This is my philosophy. I think we waited long enough that we've determined that, unfortunately, the regime is not going to fall on its own. There's people protesting, but they've done enough. They're holding it together with duct tape and string or whatever they're holding it together with, but it's not falling. And we're going to have to push it over because I think we made the determination a long time ago that this is the time it's got to go down. And we were hoping that they were going to do it themselves, but they're not. And I think that you got Russia, China. I think you got everybody looking at this because, let's compare it to Syria for a second. We waited for that. That collapsed. We kind of looked at it. We've kind of, sort of, I don't say we control Syria, but we're involved in it. We've got people on the ground there. Russia got booted out. So now they're looking at this going, oh, shit, Iran could be another place that America gets a foothold in somehow, or gets a more pro-American regime in place or whatnot. So I think the whole world is looking at this, and I agree with you, Phil. I don't think the Democrats or the Republicans, I think they've been filled in already. I think that they know. Yep.
So I'm just waiting for it to jump off. I'm not wondering if it's going to jump off. It's about to jump off. And I believe that Russia and China are going to not engage us. And you said you looked in the map. I can't think of what the name of the aircraft carrier name is. It's like the biggest one we got. It was supposed to be headed there, but it stopped right there in the channels right there by Israel. So they basically put a stopgap there. There's not going to be any military to go there. And then when you look down to the south, we're have a presence there. So we've got that whole area covered.
Yeah, we got Diego Garcia. We got stuff. Can we fly in from the island? We've got stuff in Turkey. We got stuff in Europe. We got they're going to be in some world of hurt depending on what we decide to do. The problem I think is with Trump is that he seems to I'm going to tell you his foreign policy so far. Particularly with, quote, regime change in Venezuela and what he's working on with Cuba. And I think actually has been pretty good. And I don't think I think he's smart. I don't think he really wants to get into a quote Iraq situation where we're, sending bombing the shit out. You know what I mean? I think they want to do it more precision. They want to do it in such a way that they can change the leader quickly. Even if it's, as you saw in Venezuela, they made the smart decision, I think, is they kind of kept the same government in place. They just told them, we're going to step on you if you don't listen to us. So, you didn't have a lot of chaos. There's not much chaos going on. And I think that you may see some of that in Iran as well.
So are you saying that you think we're going to go in and do as minimum as damage as possible and just
I think Iran's a little bit different than Venezuela in a couple ways. One, culturally, it's totally different, and we've struggled with that, right? So the Americas, the cultures are all similar-ish. Mm-hmm. When you get over to the Middle East, it's a whole different game of, ball of wax. So what I think there's going to be two parts to this. I think we want to change leadership very quickly and put somebody that is going to be that we can work with in place, and two, to secure our future there. I think we need to blow up every single military thing and capability that they got. So no, I do think that yes, there will be a lot more bombs dropped there than in Venezuela for sure. That's a whole different scenario.
And I'm taking it a step further. We are not looking to. They're not just going to go kill the leaders in the military. There's going to be a lot of death, in my opinion.
Could be.
And this is sad what I'm about to say. I'm just telling you what I think, not what I feel personally. I think they're looking at that. At least all my life, we've always had some kind of issue with Iran. It's ebbed and flowed through the decades, and it's reached a point where they realize that they're enriching the nuclear whatever. They're doing their nuclear enrichment. And they never stopped. Every time we tell them to stop, they keep going. And they have shown that if we give them any air, if we give them any rope, they're going to take it. Mm-hmm. I think that there's an overwhelming thought that we need to just get rid of them, period. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's almost going to be like a genocide.
Well, that's the difference, I think, between Iran and Venezuela, where Venezuela, the people were not, they hated the government. And I'm not suggesting that the Iranian people don't hate their government, but there's a lot more people in the government that are in control in Iran than in Venezuela. Venezuela was really a dictatorship, where Iran has got military wings that are completely in support of the regime. You've got a bunch of different ayatollahs and different religious people. So there's more people that you need to take out in Iran than there is in Venezuela to make change.
In modern movies and in modern politics, they always talk about cells and super cells and how they're set up where if you cut off the head, you haven't really cut off the head, and it continues. Mm-hmm. And I remember where that idea first came from, or at least where I first heard it, was in the early 70s on like a 60 Minutes interview, and they were interviewing the Ayatollah. Mm-hmm. And that's what they were talking about, was how it's this headless thing. So my point is, if they just kill all the leaders, there'll be new leaders.
That's like whack-a-mole. Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole.
Come from the dust. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll pop up. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. And by the way, that was some of the problem that we had in Iraq. And that's why you saw so many people had to die, because and by the way, I mean, it hasn't really solved itself yet. It's still not where we had hoped that it was going to go. Let's put it that way.
And I'm not even saying something negative about those people, because I like to always flip things around so I can get a full emotional feeling about it. Here in America, if some other country came here and killed our leaders and took over the country, I'm sure a lot of Americans would sit quiet and wait for their moment to strike back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even saying it's wrong of them to think that way. I'm just saying them thinking that way puts us in harm's way.
Yep, for sure.
Mike, anything else you want to talk about?
Yes, we got one last thing to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Wag the Dog.
Right.
Because we promised you guys, because I'm sure there's some of you out there went and watched that movie because we talked about it and said we're going to talk about it today. So we got to spend at least 3 minutes talking about it.
So the strategy was we were going to just talk about current news and then come to this because they intertwine so well. This movie came out in 1998 and it could come out this week and it would be relevant.
Yep.
So Mike, what's your first thoughts? So wait, let's back up.
Yeah.
You do it, Mike. What are we doing right now? What we're doing a review of Wag the Dog.
Wag the Dog, the movie. It had I had not ever actually seen the movie before, so I got the opportunity to see it for the first time. It was I think it came, don't quote me on this, came out in maybe 1997. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
And it is interesting because what you saw happen in the movie was essentially that.
Spoiler alerts. Anybody?
Spoiler alert, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I won't go too deep into it, but like what you saw in it is what you see on the surface is not necessarily reality, and politicians, particularly that are trying to get elected, are going to craft and narrate a story. So what you saw in the movie was they basically hired Hollywood to help them out to create a alternative narrative. I'll call it that. And I will tell you that that is so significant in today's both the news cycle and our current politician, particularly Donald Trump, where the solution in the movie was always defocus them. If something bad is going on over here to the left, start shooting fireworks over here on the right? Because the news cycle is just going to shift. Everybody's going to look over that way, and they'll forget all about it. And it was interesting in the movie because he was trying to get reelected, right? And the window of time was fairly short, so they had to keep. It was, if you haven't seen the movie. And I very rarely will tell you to watch a movie that's shit. That's like 30 years old. It's worth watching, and it is not at all like watching a movie where it's like, well, that's past history. That's not going on today. Oh, it's going on today.
It will not feel old.
It will not feel old. And I got to tell you, I didn't realize how many stars were in that movie too. And some of them were some of their early work, but there was a whole lineup of famous actors and actresses in that. So that's what I got to say. I mean, but it makes you think a lot because you're like, you start scratching your head especially when you listen. We've talked about this on the podcast here all the time. When you're listening to the news, you got to scratch your head and go, is that real? Are they just doing that to create? I mean, I'll use a great example of this, Greenland. Like, I mean, that could be just fabricated bullshit just to make everybody look over there because we didn't want to focus on them on who knows what. Maybe it was something as simple as sending ships towards Iran. You don't know, but. And it's funny because here we are. They created Hollywood. They made a fake war basically, and you got to wonder, like, some of these things that we got going on right now, are they real or are they fake? Venezuela. I think I said on the podcast, it could have been an inside job for all I know. That we had this all planned out ahead of time, and Maduro might even cooperated with the damn thing. He's at summer camp now. I don't know.
And that's the direction. That's the direction I'm headed. Is that back then they were demonstrating technologies that you could do back then, and when that movie came out, the joke was that most people watched the movie thinking, "Haha, that's a joke. That would never happen." But as
Right.
time has gone on and people have gotten more educated and technology has gotten simpler and more people have it, more people are starting to realize that from their own laptop, they could pull off a lot of the things that went on in this movie and are going on in real life. And using that as the backdrop, to me, it opens up the idea of when people say that Epstein may still be alive, well, he could be.
Sure.
We are learning that the powers that be protect themselves, and the movie demonstrates that the things that they can do to facilitate their freedom, their power, is immense. And like you mentioned, that they went to Hollywood to produce this war, which at the time sounded crazy. Well, not to people who are historians or people who have studied history recently, because what you'll learn is that Hollywood has been in cahoots with the government forever, whether it's just simply there's a war, make some movies about war that are positive. There's always been some kind of connection. So people no longer laugh at the idea of Hollywood being involved, especially when you find out, oh, they practically finance some of the leaders that we get. A majority of that 1 point whatever billion Kamala got, it came from Hollywood.
Exactly.
So it's not a crazy concept at all.
No.
And
particularly with the technology and AI and everything else, more like you said, Phil, more people have the ability to create an illusion. And the government itself has more ability to do it internally. They don't even need to go to Hollywood for everything anymore. They got their own studios. So yeah.
And we've seen little bits and pieces of everything in that movie. Through, like for instance, how many times has it popped up in just the last couple of years where someone shows some footage of a crowd and there's thousands of people, and then somebody else shows the original footage and somebody actually added a crowd that wasn't there?
Yep.
Or
it was from a different event altogether. They're like, look at all these people protesting, and it's like in Minneapolis, and then you find out, like, 3 hours later, that was a protest in Boston 4 years ago. It's like,
and something that they kind of made a big point of was with the music, with Willie Nelson being the music director and creating theme music. It was symbolic to me of how in America there's always a song, there's always a celebrity, there's always a story. We use symbolism to the 100th power, and it works over and over and over again. And when people argue that music doesn't affect violence, it doesn't affect blah, 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 that's the most stupid thing you could say in your life. If you know anything about hypnotism, one of the basic forms of hypnotism uses a 4/4 beat. That's why they swing the pendulum and stuff like that. 4/4 beat comes from music. Music is hypnotic.
Yep.
Then there's also things like I sent you some information about some possible alien discovery in Las Vegas, and I'm not saying that they used it to make aliens. I'm saying that a lot of things that are dispelled about maybe alien presence here. You watch the movie, you think about the current technologies and stuff, and it makes you doubt the government when they say they don't know nothing about aliens, or they have such a reasonable explanation all the time. So the thing overwhelming for me is you watch the movie and you laugh and you enjoy it, but it raises so many questions.
So many questions, for sure.
So Mike, 5 stars. Give me your rating of the movie.
Oh, it's a 5-star movie.
Absolutely. Oh, and I wanted to mention one thing that he only mentioned a few times, but I thought it was a good point. Every time they were asking about where things were as far as their strategy and what they were doing, Robert De Niro would always reference TV. Like, for instance, when they said that the war was over, and then Dustin Hoffman was like, well, we could do this and we could do that. We don't have to let the war be over. And then his reply was, the war is over. I saw it on TV.
Yeah.
And the point is the people saw it on TV, regardless of what the truth is. They saw it on TV, so that is the truth. And that remains today. Mike, I have literally observed conversations where the way the person closes the argument is to say, I saw it on the TV. Some people have even inquired, well, where did you see it at? Did you saw it on TikTok or something? No, I saw it on TV. Oh, okay.
Right.
So there are still people who literally think I can watch celestial TV and get facts. Anything else you want to say, Mike?
No, I'm sure there was a bunch of things that we didn't get to talk about, but we'll be here next week to talk about them anyways, and then there'll be some more stuff.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.